President Trump is breaking tradition, ordering former President Barack Obama's official portrait to be moved out of public view.
Trump directed staff to move the Obama portrait, a portrait of Barack Obama, to the top of the grand staircase. Two sources familiar with the matter told CNN, where it will now be out of view from the thousands of visitors who tour the White House each day. One of the sources added the portraits of both Bushes are now in the staircase area.
So petty and tiny.
Trump can move Obama's portrait, spread lies and claim that Obama started the Epstein hoax. Nothing he will do will ever remove Obama from his head, where he's been living rent-free for years. And the reason why? Single tweet from the former president carries more weight than 1,000 incoherent, grammatically flawed Truth Social posts from the current president.
And the reason some people think, wow, I don't know, I remember that economy when he first came in being pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good, because it was my economy. We had 75 straight months of job growth that I handed over to him.
As Trump instructs Republicans to do everything possible to distract from the Epstein situation while simultaneously setting a precedent to influence the 2026 elections, former President Barack Obama broke his silence this week to direct eyes to another area that Republicans are hell-bent on ruining for the American people, healthcare, or further ruining, should I say.
Why vote against it when there are popular provisions within it? And doesn't that just allow the president to say, oh, you want to raise taxes?
You can put as much lipstick on this pig as you want. This will be a political albatross for the Republicans.
Why?
Because it takes 16 million Americans off of healthcare coverage with cuts to Medicaid and cuts to the Obamacare marketplace. That will move us as a nation back to the same percentage of uninsured we had before Obamacare.
Obama tweeted, quote, "Since we passed the Affordable Care Act, Republicans have tried over and over to repeal it, and over they've failed, in part because millions of people now depend on the ACA for quality, affordable healthcare. Now Republicans are trying something different, quietly weakening the law and hoping that you won't notice. We can't let them." Now this comes after President Trump and congressional Republicans backtrack on their promise to completely repeal Obamacare, considering the president has never actually presented his concepts of a plan that have been in some drawer for years.
We're going to win by knocking the hell out of Obamacare, terminating it, coming up with something much less expensive, much better. We are going to win in every aspect of our lives.
Yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
But they've far from given up efforts to weaken the health reform law, successfully delivering a major blow to it via the wildly unpopular Big Beautiful Bill, which is predicted to leave millions without health coverage.
You look at the hospitals in your own district. Matafori Nyack Hospital is already saying, because of that vote, because of these cuts, they're going to have to cut back services. They're going to have to cut staff. They're going to have to cut care. Same thing with Westchester Hospital. Hospitals across your district are going to have to cut services and care and staff members and budgets because of your vote and because of this bill that passes. That's what they're saying.
And raise costs for those who remain in Obamacare policies and reverse more than a decade of improvement in the nation's uninsured rate, as well as the known and contentious decision to stop any expansion to low-income adults.
So let's assume that person, because they had to sit on a phone for 2 hours trying to prove every 6 months they're working, and they couldn't get through, or because the paperwork requirements are so onerous, which we saw happen in Kentucky and other places where they installed work requirements. Let's assume that person works a minimum wage job 50 hours a week, and they haven't been able, because of the bureaucracy, to verify their work, or if there's someone who is waiting for an immigration hearing. When they go into that hospital with a dire trauma, the hospital has to treat them. Who's paying for that with these cuts?
So again, one, you're making a lot of hypotheticals, but two, you're also assuming that people are. You're also assuming. No. Respectfully, Claire, you're also making. Yeah, I know. You're making hypothetical assumptions. Number one. Number two, you're assuming people are too incapable of managing the system. The fact is, New York is going to administer the work requirements that will be enacted, which go into effect in 2027. We're talking about able-bodied adults without dependent children.
Okay.
We're not talking about people. We're not talking about people. We're not talking about people who.
I'm not asking about
great,
that.
Claire, but I'm going to answer the question. So you can sit here and argue with me all you want. But the fact is,
who pays for it?
And as Obama rightfully warned, they're far from done. They aim to further undermine Obamacare before the end of the year if they opt to not extend the enhanced federal premium subsidies that former President Biden and congressional Democrats approved back in 2021. The subsidies that help bolster signups for Obamacare runs out at the end of 2025 and will be a subject of debate when Congress returns in September. Hence why Obama's trying to direct eyeballs on it right now.
Democracy is not self-executing. It requires people, judges, and people in the Justice Department, and people throughout the government who take an oath to uphold the Constitution. It requires them to take that oath seriously. And when that isn't happening, we start drifting into something that is not consistent with American democracy. It is consistent with autocracies. It's consistent with Hungary under Orban. It's consistent with places that hold elections but do not otherwise observe what we think of as a fair system in which everybody's voice matters and people have a seat at the table and there are checks and balances and nobody's above the law.
So yeah, while Donald Trump is climbing on roofs and threatening military force on his own citizens in D.C. to distract from any further questions on Jeffrey Epstein.
One day after President Trump announced his plan, National Guard troops were deployed to D.C. streets Tuesday night, joining nearly 900 federal agents and officers that have taken posts around Washington, alongside local police who are now under the authority of the Trump administration.
Because for all this rhetoric about cleaning up crime, what President Trump didn't mention yesterday was he cut nearly $1 billion in DOJ grants for violence prevention and police training, including $150 million focused on combating gun violence in cities like Washington, D.C. Now, a judge blocked the administration from revoking $11 billion. That includes funding for addiction and mental health care, but they tried to do that as well. NBC's Garrett
also trying to distract from his own woeful approval ratings across the board, but especially regarding healthcare.
So many things, but the biggest thing is, from a business standpoint, deductions, that was tremendous. Our country is roaring. Our businesses you're going to see some numbers in 12 months.
Let me just say, this is an abject disaster. Abject disaster for the President of the United States. You mentioned it, Jessica. Look, voters on Trump and inflation. He won the 2024 election because he was more entrusted on inflation than Kamala Harris was, led by a margin of 9 points. Look at where his net approval stands today, though, on inflation. My goodness gracious. Into the gutter we go. Underwater we go. He's 25 points underwater. My goodness gracious. That is where the Little Mermaid is, and he is matching the Little Mermaid. That's how far underwater he is on the issue that got him elected. He led on by 9 points on it last year, and now he's 25 points underwater. As I said, this is a complete and total disaster for the President of the United States.
So let's look ahead to 2026 when a lot of all the House Republicans, some senators going to be on the ballot. How is that shaping?
Yeah, if Republicans in Congress think that they can escape the wrath of the voters when it comes to inflation, I have a bit of a rude awakening for them. Trust which party more on inflation? You go back to the 2022 midterms. Look at this. Republicans led by 13 points on which party was more trusted in inflation. Look at where we are now. Nearly a 15-point shift in the Democrats' direction. It's It's within the margin of error, but the Democrats up by a point. This just looks totally different from where we were back in 2022 when, of course, Republicans took back the House. That's what Democrats are trying to do this time around, looking much better for them. The bottom line is the wrath that the voters feel for Donald Trump and inflation is transferring over to House Republicans and now Democrats, although it's a small lead, a big difference from where we were back in October of 2022, with Democrats actually in the positive and Republicans in the negative. Very much the reverse of where we were just 3 years ago.
Yeah. And so how do voters feel about inflation in terms of where it ranked and what kind of priority it is for them?
Right. So we started off this segment by saying that inflation was the reason that Donald Trump was elected. It was the most important issue for the voters back last year at this point. And look at where we are today. What is the top issue for you right now? It's a runaway. It's inflation. It's 34% compared to the economy, which is basically very similar at 16%, Medicare and Social Security at 14%. But the bottom line is voters in poll after poll after poll say that Donald Trump has taken his eye off the ball, off the big issue of the day, which is inflation. And that is why Donald Trump is way underwater on this issue. And it's why Democrats have caught up to Republicans on the all-important issue of inflation. I can guarantee you this, Jessica. If these numbers look right now like they do, or will look on Election Day 2026, there is no way on God's green earth that Republicans can hold on to the House of Representatives. These numbers, as I said, an abject disaster.
In the hopes that we aren't paying attention when Congress returns to debate it further in September, hoping that we don't notice that they further cut Obamacare. But we are watching, and we can't let that happen.
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.MeidasTouch.com. All 100% USA union made.